Okay. Well, then welcome everybody. Welcome to our session on technical pitch. My name is Anita Gonzalez, and I am the Mesa Deputy Director for New Mexico Mesa, and my colleague here.
I'm Sarah Halstead. I'm the Spokane Mesa Director in Washington. And in the chat, we just
And
love to know where you're from. We see
um,
like 3 or 4 of you on the top. I don't have ever because I've got so much going on. So it's so nice to see that you guys are introducing yourselves in the chat. I saw that huge amount of names and no faces yet. It's early in the morning still, so a lot of names. So glad to see you guys. Oh my goodness, wow. The whole Mesa USA is represented in this. I know you guys are eager to get going. What is this tech pitch anyway? Thank you so much for sharing where you're from.
it's always just a good idea to get a look to see where the different states are coming from. Again, if you guys are familiar with Mesa USA, we all are in our different parts of the country, but this is the one event that unites us. You know, this is the one thing that we do have all in common, but it is nice to see when we're talking about things and how different states may do things a little bit differently. So it's just a good idea to see who our audience is. Okay. Well, welcome everybody to our session. It looks like we have a wide range of attendees today. And
So in the
Sarah,
chat, yeah, I I can do this one. Sorry, that baton handoff is like, do you want to go? Yeah, and I love this chat waterfall that we can just see some of our transparency with each other. I know that it's hard when you're admitting things that are maybe something you just only think in your head and you're like, I don't even know if I can say that out loud. But share with us what intimidates you the most about the NEDC project or your biggest questions you need answers to, because we're going to be able to save the chat and we can come back around and actually address these things in Canvas. We can address them in our teacher resources, but what about the NEDC project itself intimidates you the most? And a chat waterfall is just, you just put it up there just like we did with your states. So what are your biggest questions you need answers to, or what intimidates you the most about this project and executing it, facilitating it with your students? Yeah, so being brand new, everything is intimidating. Oh yeah, using data as part of their design process. That's super huge. Descriptions of it, kid, that's one of the things we see a deficit in for sure. New students, new school. Yep. Oh, identifying and defining inequality and inequities. Yes. Finding good NEDC curriculum. Getting your students to meet the deadlines. Hopefully we'll help you with that today. Yeah, building the coding aspect. Oh, your elementary. Oh, the littles. We love the littles. Microbit is great for them. How to practice the technical pitch, how to practice it, right? Yes, ensuring the problem really addresses the inequity clearly. Yes, I think kids have this passion and then it's always trying to get them to tie back to the inequity. Building student self-confidence. What a 21st century skill, right? To talk in front of an audience. It's hard to decide what to do. We want to save the world one little bit at a time in your community that can be applied globally. Yeah. Yeah, not understanding coding, we have some great resources on the Canvas website for Mesa USA. But it's hard when it's like your own credibility on the line. But I have found that it is so releasing to be a co-learner with our students. My son could program the DVD player at 2, right? So like we just hand it off to them and they run with it and we just run alongside, or maybe walk and take a breath every once in a while, but they're gonna go faster than we are. And that's okay. That's absolutely great. Yeah, generating ideas. So hopefully we'll have a little bit of a tool for that today that can help with that creative solution aspect. Yeah, right. Awesome, you guys. Thank you so much for your willingness to be transparent and your courage in that with a group of strangers. But we're all united under that Mesa banner. So hopefully that helps make this a little bit safer space. Finding real life clients. This is real. And sometimes, especially when our students want to work with an unhoused population, we're encouraging them to go to the people that serve those populations to get feedback because we want to keep them, safe and secure. But I know it's hard sometimes to find the user to get the feedback from. Yeah, right. Thank you so much, Anita. I'm going to go ahead. You can continue to add your thoughts and ideas in the chat. We will capture that and save the chat, and then and make sure we're trying to address all of them as well.
No, so as a team, Sarah and I, when we created this presentation, we are in this session. The main part is, yes, of course, we are going to review the technical pitch competition, the basics of the competition. But as part of the technical pitch competition, you've had a time to look through the handbook, look through the scoring rubric. This is the main area where the prototype is being scored. This is where the prototype demo occurs. And oftentimes, when you're designing your actual product, your prototype, your delivery, that all centers around right, who are you designing for? What are you designing it for? The who's, the what's. And so oh, got a little jumpy with my clicker. But we are going to not only um talk about the competition itself, but we are going to walk through some activity maybe to help with some of those, how to get started on a topic, how to get started with your students. And also you are able to be able to leave here with a lot of resources, specifically with coding, and client prototyping, because I know that's also a challenge, especially if you're not familiar with different coding, platforms. Hopefully getting you started on some resources that we have used in both New Mexico and in Washington, and also some resources that we have nationally, but just kind of compiling them into, maybe how to use them. So no, to get started, the technical pitch, it is one of four for the NEDC one of the four competition component areas for the NEDC. So the four component areas, if you're not familiar, so I mentioned they were brand new. One is the academic poster, one is the symposium, second is the symposium, third is the technical pitch, and fourth is the design proposal. Or did I mention? I don't know if I double duplicated. I think that's right. But so this part is just, one of the pieces. So essentially, your students are going to be, again, designing a product, designing a prototype based on the human-centered design. But this particular event will allow students to establish the technical knowledge of their project while providing an overview of their design. So this is really where the coding, the functionality, again, as I mentioned, the actual demo, this is where it is all counted in the part of the competition. So during this time, students are responsible for delivering a presentation to basically share out the development of their design, from the research phases to the experimentation phases, all the way through the engineering design process, including iterations, and also like why they made these design choices. It really is heavily focused on the whys, and also whatever end stage that their prototype is at, some conclusions and some decisions about their prototype from then on. And then the students will need to know to demonstrate the working prototype, and also be able to understand the operations. And I should probably have taken this word out, mechanical operations. I apologize for leaving that in. It's not necessarily always mechanical operations because as we're using coding, it could also include other things. But being able to really understand the coding, um, being able to understand the whys of why they designed their product the way that they did. So some basics for the technical pitch is that it must have a coding component. So that can be any platform that you choose to use. I would suggest choosing a platform that you are comfortable in. I would suggest selecting a platform that you have resources to, selecting a platform that you think your students will be able to have access to. So whether that be, maybe something that has, you know, an online portal, or something that maybe you have a ton of Arduino breadboards lying around, or whatever the case may be. But when you're making that selection of your coding component, I think those are the two things that where you can have resources built in for those. And two, it must be a human-centered design. So, and when you're talking about human, you're designing for someone, you are designing for a client. I know it was mentioned in there, sometimes it's hard to find, an actual client in your community, but you are designing for somebody, for a group of people within your community to specifically address a community inequity. So those are the main, those are the, not the main, those are the core requirements of the NEDC project. So within the technical pitch, the whole presentation time that students have, these are some of the rules, they'll have up to 10 minutes. And I think that's a whole lot of time, but 10 minutes when you're trying to get, a year's worth of research, a year's worth of work, a whole lot of information out. So by the time competition time comes around, it's a really concise time to include a demo. A demonstration must be included within the 10 minutes allotted time. So that's really important to note that because that needs to be practiced, whatever is getting developed, whatever is getting built, it's just really important that that is included there within the time. And it's also important to note that when they do this demonstration, when you're practicing this presentation, the judges for the competition are allowed to interact with the demo, like have the judges actually try it. But there's not a question answer conversation allowed with the judges. So that rule was put in just for fairness because, you know, engaging some, just so it's meant to be an objective demonstration between the judges. So what that means is that as you're creating out your presentation time, however you want to structure your time, when you're working with your students on their presentation skills, learning how to talk and act and demo and using your team members all to get the objectives done within that 10 minutes time. Also during this presentation time, it is highly encouraged that students and teams use electronic presentations. This is the one area where electronic presentations are encouraged. You can use your engineering design notebook. You can use any other visual aids. Keep in mind that this is, again, the one event that is it's the presentation style public facing of the NEDC competition. So depending upon your competition area, like so if say you're at a facility, this is usually, say on a stage, can be on a stage, or it can be to a small group, just kind of keeping that in mind. So again, when you're talking and you're working into the basics of what to integrate within your presentation, keep in mind your visuals, how you're using them, and also the ability to display them. Like if you have something really tiny and in a really big room, probably won't convey very well. So that's just some of the basics of the competition as we get into the next steps here. So we're talking about the presentation. So we know it's a presentation there to get the technical elements across of this project, of this big, massive project. We've gone through the timing, the formats. Now, what should be the content of this presentation? Essentially, during this presentation, these are the who's, how's, and what's to this build. One, during this time, your presentation should include background information. So again, the main thing, it needs to address an inequity within the community. So it should be starting out, who is your user? Who is your client? Who are you designing for? What inequity is being addressed? How does your prototype fulfill the user's need? So this should come across at some point during your presentation very clearly. Secondly, which does score a lot of weight, and I'll get into the rubric here later on in this presentation, is the engineering design process. Again, the hows. Again, the end product is definitely important, but the process and the journey is even more so important in the sense that, what iterations did you try? How are you changing up your design to be influenced by your user? What feedback are you getting? Why did you make the choices that you made? The materials that you made, the coding choices that you made. And they could be simple answers, they could be very complex answers. We used Arduino because that's what we knew how to do. We used microbit because that's what our teacher said. Or, we used microbit because that was the most user friendly for our client. Whatever the reason may be, just knowing why you are making the choices that you're making within your prototype design. Your presentation should have an adequate description of your design. This is a very important skill for your students as they're building out their prototype. They This is their project. So they should be able to not only demo it, but be able to describe the functionality, be able to describe the usability. How did they integrate their coding? They should be familiar with their code. Really have them take ownership of their project because that should come across in this component area. And again, when they're talking about the reasons, when they're talking about the coding, when they're talking about all the nuts and bolts, they need to be able to own that and know why they made those design choices that they did. Um, Once they're done at their end product, wherever that end product may be, again, within the engineering design process, are you ever really done? Are you always rebuilding? But whatever that end product is, at the timing, there's always suggestions for improvement. Maybe what is the final assessment evaluation? Does this meet the needs for your client? What were your constraints? What if you could make some next steps? What would those be? And again, depending upon, I want to make an important note here. There are different elements to this project, and some are geared to be at different stages of the competition. Like for instance, um, the design proposal is meant to be that. It's a design proposal for the beginning stages. This technical pitch is meant to show your final work at the time of competition. But depending upon the state that you're in, for instance, you may have varying levels of competition. So you may have a regional competition very early on in the year. And so your end stage is going to be very different than if, say, maybe you make it to your state competition 3 months later or 2 months later, whatever that timeline looks like. So your final conclusions and maybe recommendations may be different depending upon the timeline of the student's project. And then also, again, as mentioned, is that prototype demonstration. It's really, really important that this gets worked into, it gets practiced to be within the time frame allotted. And again, practice, 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 working in how to demo your prototype while speaking or utilizing team members to make this all happen. So the team numbers are 2 to 4. So, again, utilizing different members as to how to effectively do this within your time frame to maximize the effect of the presentation. Okay. And I'm going to jump to chat. I'm on one screen, so I can't see all of it at one time. So I'm going to take just a quick break here. Okay. So now I'm going to go into the rubric a little bit. If you notice, this is the longest rubric, just because there is a lot of component areas. It's also one that, again, point-wise, it's one of the bigger ones, just because there's a lot. This is where the technical aspect of the device or the project prototype is being scored. So again, the requirements that I just went over, this is where it's reflected. Here, this first section of the rubric is, talking about the background of the project, like, your user, how it relates, those sort of things. Then you're getting into, it also talks about the prototype demonstration. On the screen here, you can see of note for the most part, and this is the same criteria that's true for all of the NEDC rubrics, is the scale that we're using. So just as of note, depending upon the judge, depending upon the level of competition, we're looking at 2 to 3s as being, meeting the criteria and doing good. Really to get to those 4s, that higher end of the spectrum, those are the excellent. So, and that is just a way of differentiating between our different teams. Also of note, within the scale, you can see where some things are double weighted because they're of extra importance in regards to this competition. So for instance, the demonstration is extremely important in this competition. So you really want to make sure that that prototype is working and can be demonstrated effectively with ease. when you're getting into this large chunk of points is given to students know what materials they chose, whatever they may be, that they know why they chose them, that they're able to share that knowledge out, that whatever technology usage they decided, whether it be a physical prototype where they're using sensors, wiring, breadboards, or whether it be like a web platform or an app platform, that whatever technology they're using is appropriate for the design and they know why they selected those choices. Like, why did they choose this platform? Why did they choose this particular sensor? Um, Now that they should be familiar with their code, no matter what type of platform they use. And I also want to make a note of coding. I know this question comes up usually in all states. I know it comes up in mine each year. Is there a requirement for code? Like, do they have to use Python or do they have to use a particular code? The answer is no. They can use whatever code they want. That includes drag and drop coding, that includes block coding, that includes, whatever that may look like. So again, depending on your skill, depending upon the resources that you have, depending upon the technology you choose to use, um, you're not going to be scored on the complexity of the code. You are being scored on the student's ability to relay why they chose that code and their understanding of it. It's logic based. So why did they make those coding choices? No matter how complex the code is, if then statements, if this, then that, like, why did they choose the code to do what it did? So again, if it is a complex code, there's a big note about code is commented. They should be able to explain the differentiations in the code and why, they made breaks in there. Um, they should be able to explain, again, whether it's drag and drop or whether it's, a different coding platform, what variables, loops, conditional statements, those are all common amongst all coding platforms.
Anita, just to clarify really quick, I had talked to Bill Pike about it as well, that when you drop and drag code, like you get it from someplace that's already made it. So you can do that from SparkFun, where Arduino is an Arduino resource and you can just copy and paste code. But in general, the students need to be able to manipulate something in there to make it unique to their project. So when we say drop and drag code, there's still an element of explaining what you did to change the code or manipulate the code, or you understand how the code operates. So all of those explanations will gain you the points that you're looking for.
So, and again, I just want to point out the things that are of double value. So prototype demonstration, technology usage, coding platform, key components of code, prototype functionality. So those are very important within this event to know. The second page of the rubric is just wrapping it up with engineering design process. Again, their whys, their steps, their challenges, their solutions, and then conclusions and recommendations. So again, your challenge is to work with your students to develop an effective presentation to really just get their prototype across. And so with that, and again, as questions come up in the chat, Sarah and I will be kind of tag teaming the chat when she's speaking. I'll kind of monitor the chat a little bit, trying to answer questions. And at the end, we'll also open up for questions also as well. There's a good time there.
There's a great question in the chat about other expectations or recommendations for how to make full coding used available for view. So our students, I think because the poster has a limited amount of space and then code is so small when you're doing a PowerPoint in front of an audience, the snapshot of the code that makes the most sense to be able to highlight, because code can get quite long, and then being able to say, we had this full code, here's the pages in our engineering notebook, we've printed it out, but their space is limited. So you can just pick a snapshot of an area where maybe the code was actually, this is where it was manipulated. And so it makes the most sense. And then I think that our students tend to not put comments in on the code where you can put double slashes or whatever the code requires in order to be able to put a comment. It's super important that students are able to have the comments there, so anyone coming by their poster, I know that we're talking about tech presentation, but when you come by, you can see what that code meant, and that shows that students also know what they were doing there. So both ways, you can definitely not have the full, code on your poster. I don't think that you're going to lose points for that, but I think it should be someplace so that the judges can see that you have a full code. If that makes sense. And I hope that answers that question. But if not, go ahead and insert a clarifying question or another question to follow on. Thank you, Daniel, for that question. We're going to move into some of you asked, like kind of how do we get started and how do we get our kids to come up with some great ideas? And right at the beginning of the handbook for the NEDC, they have an awesome graphic that is showing the difference between equality and equity, or an inequality and an inequity. And we really want students to be able to kind of focus on what is a community for them that's local, and what is an issue, a problem that seems to create an unfair situation for a particular population within a community that they are in. So we're still really trying to keep it very regional, very much something where they're interacting within this community, and they have an ability to make a change that they can see in their community. And so starting off, I have to give a shout out to one of our 7th grade teachers at Gary Middle School at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade team is amazing. Grant Better created this as a better tool than what we had started with for a student brainstorm session. And so basically, Anita can drop in the links into the chat to our Mesa Google Drive teacher resource folder. And in that folder are the lessons that are around day 1, day 2, and day 3, or you can extend it and make it a whole week, where students come together in your class to get to know each other as a cohort and start to feel more connected with each other. And so this student interest survey starts out with them talking, just thinking and inking on their own paper, what communities are important to them, where do they belong, what are their interests, what activities do they do, what are the things that topics of interest to them. As students start to fill out this sheet, there are also white sheets posted in the room. You can use butcher paper on tables, you can use big, huge white Post-it notes, whatever works for your space. But essentially, we have those topics listed up on the Post-its. And in a chalk talk is what this protocol is called from EL Education. It's listed in the resources, it's listed in the lesson plans. The lesson plans are not fully fleshed out to include all of the state standards and things like that on the back page, but the lessons are fleshed out. So you have links in there embedded in everything. Students being able to start to share out, in a visual way, what their interests are, leads to the next round where students start to take, we have stickers that are color coded, so little dot stickers, and each kiddo has a color associated with them, and we have that color on the seating chart so kids can find each other later. But in round 2, kids go and they put a sticker on things that they align with as well. And so this is just seeing a visual display of where all of our stickers are landing and how many people are aligned with different ideas. And then the students actually use that key, the seating chart with the stickers. We actually make a digital version and put it in their teams, but teachers have put it up on their projectors on the screen so kids can see each other and find each other. That round 3 is finding your allies. And so all of a sudden we start to see students connecting around issues of concern, communities that they didn't even realize they shared. And so this is a way to develop not only, cohort connections within your classroom, but also we're starting to now flesh out, well, what do our kids care about in this class? And it might be a good time to just go ahead and show them the UN Sustainable Development Goals as just the screen of the goals, the things that are important globally. We have, a reduction of poverty, an elimination of poverty, elimination of hunger. These are bins that students seem to really be passionate about: unhoused populations, drug use, different communities that they're involved with, both on a micro level in their school and also a little bit more on a macro level, like in their city. We want to keep it kind of constrained to the region. So definitely when you're working with students, try to be encouraging them to think about the communities that they share really personally. So faith-based communities, it could be gender-based communities, it could be a community at their for their athletic team, could be their band, their music, their art, but the communities that they feel like they belong to, we start to now in the second day of this, we start to look at, okay, if we pull all of the issues that seem to be of main concern, usually we come up with about 6 issues and we do another set of Post-its. And this is going to be more of what's called a World Cafe. And the World Cafe is where students at the Post-its, and we usually put them on a table so that students can write. We just pulled probably 5 or 6 different issues that seem to be really important to the class. And we title all of the Post-its with those issues, 1 issue per poster. And we set kids up in teams of about 3 or 4. And the students take that idea. We have prompts, and they're all in the lesson plans and the PowerPoints. The prompts ask them, pretty much, where do you see this issue happening? In what community do you see this issue really playing out where it's of concern? What population, what group of people does it really seem to impact? How do you see it impacting them? What are the ways that this is a problem that you can see? And how would you describe that? So as you actually, sorry, I'm going to pause for just a second. Anita, did we get that in the chat so they can go to the teacher resource folder? Okay, so the first day 1, is really when we're just doing rounds 1, 2, and 3 and finding our allies after we've done the chalk talk. Day 2 is where we come together and we really look at the issues and the communities that they impact. And so with the World Cafe, the students are together at each poster, but we give them about 2-3 minutes, and maybe more. And especially with middle school, herding squirrels is an everyday thing with middle school. So we give them the time to answer the prompts, and then at the rotation, they leave a leader behind. The leader's probably been the one who's been selected to write down the answers from the team, from the group that's there. And they rotate. And as they rotate, the one that's left behind, the leader, explains what the group before had thought about, and they continue on in their brainstorming, and they get new ideas and new thoughts. And then they rotate and they leave another leader behind. And as they rotate and leave the leaders behind at the last rotation, we actually take time for those last leaders to go ahead and summarize the sheets to the whole class. So your last leader needs to be aware that that's going to be part of their gig. And so we start to see really what kids are thinking about as far as what issues seem to be of huge concern to them and where those issues are happening in their lives, in the populations and the communities that they're in. And so this is a way for us to get started on developing an idea of what matters to them most. And then after that, on day 3, we actually sort the students based on issues that we have a survey, and I've included it in the link, and I made a copy of it. It's a Microsoft Forms survey. You can do whatever you need or want with it. It's just make a copy, put it in Google Forms, whatever you need. But if we ask the kids on a personal level what issue was most important to them from the day that we were doing our discussions, we start to be able to see where students then align by issues of concern and maybe communities where they see those issues playing out, those inequities, those unfair situations. And so then the next day we start to group them around an issue that they are all concerned about with new prompts. And so then teams begin to form. It doesn't have to be from that day that the whole, it's set in stone, but we start to see kids who have common concerns be able to have a real full conversation about that and start to kind of wonder aloud, what can I do to address what I'm concerned about in a way that incorporates technology, because we let them know this is going to be kind of a coding and programming and technology focused solution to the problems that you are seeing and you're seeing people experience in your community. So this is just to say that by the time we get to day 3 or maybe day 5, if you've taken a little bit longer to go through that process, we start to see teams forming, groups forming around these ideas of the changes that they see they want to make around issues of concern for them. I think, Anita, you can push it to the next slide. Okay. So what we do need to do is actually go to, we need to go to the Google Drive screen. Is it possible for you to jump over there? I'm so sorry. I was technology
The
and
Google
something back
Drive
and forth.
or the Padlet screen?
The Google Drive screen so that we can see what the resources are in that bin, in that folder. So hopefully this gives you an idea. You are more than welcome to manipulate any of these resources as you need or want to. It's just a place to springboard off of. So what we want to look at is we want to pull up the engineering lab book resource. So you can see the interest survey and Chalk Talk lesson and that has an actual 3 lessons embedded in it and all sorts of resources in there as well, PowerPoints, all of that. And then down at the engineering lab book template, we have a Google Slides template and we have a Microsoft Word PDF template as well. Is it possible to open that? Just want you to see that once students get started on brainstorming and they have their groups developed, then this lab notebook starts them on the design proposal process. So as we scroll down, I think this one is fully, oh, this is pages 4. This is the 4-pager. So go back and the one that is actually like 13 pages long is the one where they can actually start to, write down their thoughts about what is the problem, how can we possibly, come up with an idea for a solution that would fit this particular problem and incorporate technology. So this is an amazing resource. I believe it came from Oregon, but it could be Mesa USA, and it does say 23, 24, but we can use it for this year. And then if you want to go back, and do the menu for the Google Drive, just so you guys can see that there are tons and tons of resources that we have that'll also be shared out in Canvas, but you'll always have a link to this. I just want to pull up the checklist and the rubric, Anita, so that they can see those too. And that's what we're asking for your feedback on the lessons and the Padlet and things that you can see that would be useful. So we have two rubrics. I'm going to go ahead and pull up in the teacher rubric first. Because what we did was we actually fleshed out what the level 3 criteria is, a success criteria from the scoring guide, the rubric that's in the handbook. But what does a level 1 and a level 2 look like, and what does level 4 look like? And what we did was we really focused on growth mindset words that would acknowledge when students had made progress. They were just beginning, building, and then proficient. So we want to acknowledge what kids are doing that we can see as part of the process to get to a 3 for proficiency. And then we have an area for comments. And at some point, there's drop-down comments that are available. So this is a teacher resource. You can actually score in here. You can you can just click on the cells and the scores come up, and the comments cell has drop-down comments. They may not be activated right now, but they will be. And so there's a way that you can use this tool even if you're using it to grade in PowerSchool or whatever your system is. But what we wanted to also highlight is leaning into the level 4. This isn't actually articulated in the scoring guide. And so we were looking for things that level students up in their higher order thinking, that broaden the use of their product to more populations, that take it to the global level using the UN Sustainable Development Goals as a guide. And so anything that really took that from, yes, you've met the criteria, to, wow, you've really exceeded expectations at a mastery level that shows higher order thinking or deeper content knowledge or deeper level of understanding and application. So that's where the success criteria comes out. And I just have to shout out to our amazing teachers and staff who co-developed the language in the rubrics based on the growth mindset kind of guidance for success criteria. So going to the student version, we've actually collapsed 1 and 2. So all they get to see is 3 and 4. First of all, it's a little busy for kids just to have all 4 criteria on there. But when you go to the student version, it's collapsed down. So all you see is the 4, the 3, and a 0. If they haven't gotten it there yet, they can self-evaluate it as 0, but it's really for their self-evaluation of their project. And so, Anita, if you want to go over to the checklist, is the last thing I want to share with you so that you have an opportunity to look and comment on the Padlet. The checklist takes those level 3 criteria and it puts it in check boxes with an assigned team member who's going to be addressing that. If it gets completed, we're putting that in the completed column, but also the dates on the left-hand side, you can embed the dates. We have placeholders there. So this checklist takes them through step by step. What do they need to do in order to develop the technical pitch? And we usually flow from, of course, the design proposal. We start to set up a PowerPoint that helps them to create slides that they can print and put on a poster and then modify to use in their technical pitch. The technical pitch then comes together from that poster, and then the symposium talk comes together from the technical pitch preparation. So I think in flow, that makes a lot of sense. We will have in our resource folder, and we will share with the Canvas folder for Mesa USA 4 checklists for each element and 4 rubrics for teachers and other evaluators that go levels 1 to 4, and 4 rubrics for students to use for self-evaluation for each element. So those will be in this Google Drive folder, as well as we'll share them with the Canvas for Mesa USA. So going to the brainstorming activity, we just wanted to see what your thoughts are and any questions you might have that can help us to either improve on the resources that we're providing to you or answer your questions even and before the end of this session. So if we can jump over to the Padlet, all you need to do is hit the plus sign, and then you can just title it however you want to. And Anita, how much time do they have to play around on the Padlet?
Maybe just 1 or 2 minutes. So
Yeah, so for us to be able to get you to engage with the materials, just a helpful like feedback to us. What are things that we can change or improve on? You are more than welcome to take these guides and resources and do whatever you want with them. Just make a copy. I think everything is set up in the Google Drive so you make a copy so you don't change the master, but y'all know what to do with that. We've lived through the pandemic and Zoom world. We know what we're doing. So thank you so much. I hope these are helpful to you. And we will be providing more resources in that folder as well. So if anybody has any questions, throw them in the chat.
we'll revisit, the Padlet here in a minute, here at the end, when we'll get into our questions. If we have some time at the end of our session to go ahead and review those. But I do want to share some other resources. Sarah, thank you for going through all the different resources and the drives. And we'll just take some time and revisit the Padlet here at the end. Walking through all those. I do want to share some additional resources that are available, again, that we're sharing with you. So again, each of our different states, has different things, that may be offered. Even if you're from New Mexico, you may not have known that all these things existed or maybe where to find them. So over the years, we've done within our state, different approaches to how do we teach coding? Some have been in-person workshops, some have been, different sessions with mentors, whatnot. But when possible, we have also went, because we're a very large state geographically, and not all of our resources are to all of our schools. So we've looked to do a lot of our training hybrid or virtual, and in any opportunity we get, we've been able to record it and share it out. So New Mexico Mesa does have a YouTube channel. There's quite a few videos on there from our content over the years. But I did go ahead and create a specific playlist within our Mesa YouTube channel, specifically to coding help. So, any video that may have a topic of coding support, kind of threw it in there. So again, if you are maybe at you're at a site, you're at a school that maybe you just don't even know where to start, maybe this is a good place. Is what is Arduino? What is, when you're talking about web design, where are you at? And so these are just some videos. Some you can even walk through with your students. And again, just as of note, they are done live and in the moment and in the time for the purpose. But some of them, like for instance, we just had our recent teacher professional development conference. And so our presenter, talked about, for this NEDC year, how do you incorporate an app into a project that you want to do? How do you incorporate microprocesses and sensors into maybe a prototype or an idea that you have? So it really gets into that prototyping next step. Like, how do you incorporate that coding component? And so the link, let me go ahead and take a couple minutes here, and I will put them here in the chat, the second batch of links. And so these again are all for you. Just for time's sake, we don't have the time to go through all of them necessarily, but I'll share out a document with you which does have, them all kind of hyperlinked on there. Um, but again, please feel free to go into our YouTube channel. Please feel free to go ahead and walk through any of those. And I also want to make a note of our Mesa USA YouTube channel. So this year, you guys are part of our 2024 convening. There are just as of note, we have again recorded our sessions for both the 22 and the 23 convening. And I think there are some sessions that we've done that are still very relevant. Like if you're looking for resources, if you're looking for how to get started. Last year, for instance, we hosted a session here with the resource we have in here in New Mexico with our Computer Science Alliance. And they shared a document, or she, Paige Prescott, was very generous and kind of created this like how to get started in computer science kind of document component. So those are all still very relevant trainings, very relevant resources. You guys again just kind of resharing for the purpose of if you're not sure where to get started in coding, if you're not sure where to go for help, as coding and all relates to prototyping within your design. Um, so this is just a lot of resources, and again, we'll share out the links for all of those there. And again, just when we're, here some final notes for this project is when you're looking to, maximize within the technical pitch component, or in general, because this is, the one area where we're prototyping. One is you're getting started, determine your technology usage, and that's something that you should try to determine, early as to where to invest. Take some time if you're not sure, and maybe dabble in some technologies if you're not sure where to go. But really, kind of pick a path, and I think that will help determine, when you're pairing together your community need, with your technology, that's when your project comes to fruition. Um, Again, starting on engineering design notebook, Sarah did a great job of walking through that notebook, electronic notebook that we have. You may have another version in your state. You may have another version you like to use in your classroom. Organizing, dividing and conquering, keeping checklists, working through the component. The prototype that is scored in this event is relevant and important for all the other aspects of the NADC competition. Again, as you get closer to the end competition date, make sure you practice using your evaluation rubrics, for final scoring and judging. Utilizing all your supplemental materials and just making sure that teams feel comfortable sharing on their project and taking ownership in it. That goes a super, super long way with all of the judges there. Um, and I think that is the end there with questions. Before we get to the survey, I am going to go ahead and we do have maybe a couple of minutes here for the Padlet or in the chat. Let me go see if I can even open that up. Let's see here.
You can't maybe see it, but I will be making comments back to you on that Padlet, and you can continue to come back to that resource. And as things auto update, so in the rubrics, when they're interactive for the teacher side, when you click on a cell that should have a score, that score should be a drop down selection or something that you can just click on and score. And then comments, there should be a place where the comments have a drop down and you can select a generic comment, or you have the ability to type in a comment. You can print these and write on them. But one thing that I did want to mention with the rubrics is because their success criteria is identifying what you do see that they've done in a positive direction, then the comments field is for the suggestion that you make for the student improvement to be able to go and move from a 1 to a 2 or a 2 to a 3 or 3 to a 4. So that's where the comments that will drop down will be generic help for that. They should be listed in order of 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4 as you would select them that way. But then you can also type in or write in anything that you want that would be a help to students to be able to get to the next level. So just so you know, just keep checking back if it doesn't interact with you. There's macros involved. So if your district blocks that, that might be an issue for an interactive rubric, but we will have that as a resource for you guys.
And I was trying to share a document, and I don't know if I have the capability as not the host. It won't let me share a file, maybe because I'm not the host of the session. But again, just the links here. If you want to just take a moment, maybe before you leave, I actually just had a separate just PDF document with all the links. But before you go, if you want to maybe like copy the links from the chat before you go, if you so you just have them ready. At the end of the convening, I know it was asked for the slides. We have already uploaded our slide deck as well as the document, which has all of the links into the technical pitch folder that will be shared to you upon the conclusion of the convening. So you will have access to the slide deck and you'll have access to a PDF with all of these links because we went through a whole lot in a short amount of time here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things we wanted that, to take back into your classroom to help not only with the competition itself, but with coding, prototype prototyping, getting started in the actual prototype for your project. And we maybe, I know in the comment it was, if you can please take some time to complete the survey. I had up the QR code. There's a link in the chat again to go ahead and complete the survey for the session. And I believe we have like 1 minute left or 2 minutes left. If there are any questions that anyone wants to be vocal about and share them out, we'd love to help with that. But hope this
Yeah.
helps in getting on your journey for technical pitch.
And just so you know, I know that the lesson plans are labeled like different weeks, week 3, 4, 7. Don't think you missed anything. There's 3 days, and we were able to come into classrooms and interact with the students and lead those lessons in different weeks of this year. So you can change whatever you need to change on those, change the logo, change whatever. We're great at stealing things as teachers. So do that. 100% affirm that. And thanks, guys, for showing up. Thanks for being here. And if you want to drop a comment in the Padlet, I'll continue to interact with that as well as a resource if you have questions. But I think that you can reach out. I think our emails are somewhere, maybe the first page, but don't hesitate. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have a clarifying question, please.